They're asking the crowd not to throw objects. So far, we've only seen bottles being thrown at the police. We have not seen anything else at this point. There is a lot of yelling, a lot of screaming, a lot of confusion. We've got a lot of peaceful demonstrators here who are caught up in the middle of this, who are trying to urge some of the people here to move back. One man is now kneeling down in the street before the police, urging everybody to move back. The police right now showing a lot of restraint at this point. They're still holding their line, but so far nothing has happened at this point yet in terms of action by the police department. But all their shields are on, all their helmets, all their gear. A lot more armored vehicles now coming down West Florissant. A lot of the crowd off on the side street yelling at the police officers, but so far that's all we see at this point. It looked as if this all started approximately 10 or 15 minutes ago. We're getting another announcement. All right, the police got on the horn, asking people to disperse immediately. And now more bottles are being thrown at the police.
Do not throw items. Do not throw objects that harm individuals. For your safety and the safety of others.
Now we're hearing a siren of some sort. Another vehicle is coming out onto the middle of the street. More people are now walking out. There's a man with a bullhorn approaching the police line. I can tell you Captain Ron Johnson is right at the front of that police line. He is not wearing a helmet or any kind of body armor whatsoever. He is standing there looking at the crowd, standing in front of the officers. He is now speaking with another gentleman who has come up. They're talking. It seems as if this entire thing is at a critical point right now where it could tip in either direction, and Johnson and this gentleman seem to be doing their best to try to keep this crowd under control. More people trying to approach the emergency vehicle. And again, the gentleman with the bullhorn urging everyone to get out of the way. I can tell you there's probably a lot of media crowding on the side here as well, with cameras as well. Now here come more officers. They're coming out. They have weapons. They are going to make arrests. They're making arrests. Right now they're grabbing people and making arrests, and they are handcuffing them and taking them back. I don't know what this will do to the crowd, but tensions are really high right now, and there's a lot of anger all of a sudden that's spilled out into the street. More police are working their way out into the crowd, and they are pushing everyone back. They're pushing everyone back. It is an incredibly chaotic scene right now. Everybody's moving back real quick again. The police are going back in their lines. We're still hearing that piercing siren sound. There's a lot more police officers here that have come streaming down West Florissant to support that line of officers that were here at Ferguson Avenue. The protesters are not going away. They seem to be moving forward. Now an armored vehicle is coming down this way. I got to move out of the street. It's coming this way. I'm going to retreat back over here. And I have a better view now of what I can see. They're still making efforts to try and move that crowd back away from that line of armored officers. Right now, it seems as if I'm not seeing any more bottles or things being thrown at the police. A lot of people here are making a tremendous effort to try and calm everybody down. That piercing noise just got a little louder. And now that line seems to be retreating back to a distance here that police maybe feel comfortable with at this point. I hope you guys can still hear us and still get this, because it really is quite interesting. It's quite interesting what's going on. We really hit a point here where it seemed as if things were going to tip into another night of violence, but it may be at this point. It's been avoided right now. Now, I can tell you there seems to be a great deal of anger in the crowd as it continues to retreat back up West Florissant. The police are not moving. They are still holding their police line. We are at the corner of Ferguson Avenue in West Florissant. We are right in front of a Family Dollar store that was actually open for business today and so far has not been damaged. Okay, that piercing noise is getting louder again. It seems to be coming from that large armored vehicle right in the center of the street. The crowd, some in the crowd holding their hands up, milling around. This was not the way things had been going for most of the day and into the early evening hours here in Ferguson. State police had managed to keep the street clear. They had let the protesters continue to march on the sidewalks as long as they kept moving. They did not want people standing around. Now another man is approaching the police line with his hand up. He's been told to stop, and he is gesturing to the officers, and now he's going back. But for the most part, those protests seemed to go on. They were loud. There were a lot of people. But people kept moving on the sidewalks, and the police managed to keep the streets clear. And we saw the officers out here mingling. Captain Johnson was out here after sundown talking with a lot of people. But as I mentioned, a large crowd just started to form in this intersection about 15 minutes ago. Things started getting a little agitated. We saw what looked like a fight or a lot of scuffling break out, and then bottles started being thrown at the police. And once we heard some glass bottles crash, that's when we saw the police go back and get their helmets and their gear, and then those armored vehicles seemingly just came out of nowhere, pulled right up with their bright spotlights on. And now we've got this large truck with that piercing siren noise right now. But everything seems to be in a standoff position right now. We're not seeing the mingling of police and protesters that we had seen all evening. It's almost as if both sides have gone to their own side and they're staring each other down at this point.
Matt, you're doing an outstanding job of reporting from the scene. Steve and Sharon in studio as we begin News 4 at 10. Give us an idea how many protesters, how many police are in the standoff here, and do the protesters outnumber the police by a wide number?
Yeah, that's a great question, Steve. I wish I could tell you. I don't have the high vantage point where I can actually look down West Florissant to get an idea, but it looks as if, well, I mean, the protesters are scattering all around. I mean, it's not a solid group of protesters that's in front of us. I would guess maybe 1,000 people here right now immediately facing the police, and it looks as if there are at least a few hundred police officers out here, all in front of those armored vehicles right now. But there are so many more protesters, Steve, further back up West Florissant, further back up towards the Quick Trip. So it's hard to say and looking down in the dark, but there are certainly a lot of people here tonight. You know, there is no curfew, and so we had been seeing an endless stream of people leaving and people coming in, going back and forth. We actually saw a lot of clergy and ministers here. Now the armored vehicle is making an attempt. It wants to move everybody out of the street, and they are making they are making an attempt to move everyone out of the street.
And we just heard
right
some
now.
shots.
And that's making a lot of people angry right now, I can tell you. That is making a lot of people angry.
Armet Cesny
It just
reporting live.
now that armored vehicle went straight down West Florissant, and I don't know if it's answering an emergency call or what it's doing. It's now taking a position up in a parking lot near the McDonald's. It looks like a side position from these protesters. The other officers remain, and the other armored vehicles remain right now. I'm just getting reunited with my photographer, Scott Thomas. We had gotten separated, but he kept coming. He kept bringing the pictures to you. Scott, we're on live, so now we've got another event going on out in the street. It looks like we've got protesters holding hands, and I don't know if they're getting ready to pray or if they're doing a form of peaceful protest. But as I look to my right, I can see these officers. They certainly seem ready to go. And there's the siren again. And they're not moving. They are. Go ahead. Yeah, Steve, it looks as if these are a group of the peaceful protesters who are now making a human chain and actually making an effort to police themselves, and they are pushing the crowd north on West Florissant. They're pushing them away.
We got a whole.
Now I can see lights on the other end, police lights on the other end, but they are pushing this crowd away from these police officers.
Matt, we want to
continue to move and not break their line. Yeah.
Matt, we'll step away from you for just a moment. Julian Johnson is about 3 to 4 blocks away in West Florissant. You see a line of police cars heading, we believe, toward Julian's position. And Julian, do we understand that you heard gunshots within the last few minutes?
Steve, that's right. We're at the corner of West Florissant and Canfield, and just a few moments ago, we heard several flurries of gunshots. We're not sure if that's what this group of about 9 or 10 officers, possibly 12, have just rushed down West Florissant to get to. But again, there were about, I'd say, 9 gunshots that we heard on this end. That's further down about a quarter mile from where Matt Cesny is up the street. Right now, you're seeing them gather at the burned QT at North Winds Estates Drive right there at the corner of West Florissant and North Winds Estates Drive. It looks like they're setting up, possibly positioning in some way to possibly deal with these protesters right now. As I was coming down to this location, we saw hundreds of protesters walking away from us toward Matt's location. So that was that skirmish up there that they had with police. But all of a sudden, when we heard those gunshots, the officers took off in this direction. So we have officers here also in the parking lot that we're set up in here at the corner of Canfield and West Florissant. And you can see there's just people that are out here, not even protesting, but just trying to see exactly what's going on. We're not sure if they're a part of the peaceful protesters or a part of the people who are causing trouble. You can see 2 more. That's a county police and a state trooper rolling out of here. There's going to be 2 more state trooper vans that come out here. And again, they're also going further up West Florissant toward West Florissant and Chambers. We're not sure if they might be trying to protect that Delwood border because they don't want these protesters, like they did last night, to leave Ferguson and go into Delwood to possibly cause more trouble. We saw looting at the Delwood market last night, and police are trying to put a stop to that, Sharon and Steve.
All right, Julian Johnson there. You heard him say he heard as many as 9 shots fired. Police at that burned out QT trying to get their tactical response together. Julian Johnson, a quarter of a mile away from our Matt Cesny, where there was a flurry of activity. About 9:40, you said, Matt. The crowd began to grow and bottles were thrown.
Yes, Sharon, we're hearing another loudspeaker announcement from the police asking people to disperse. It looks as if it's slowly happening. There are some people who are still trying to defy it by walking in the middle of the street. but for the most part, this crowd has cleared out and is making West Florissant clear again. But the police once again have not moved. They're at the ready. They have a straight line all the way across. And now the announcement is for us, for the reporters, to return to the side of the road and to clear the street as well. And we're complying. We're on the corner. There are a lot of people now walking around with handkerchiefs over their faces. This is obviously something that they've experienced over the last couple of days, the smell and the sting of tear gas, and many people seem to be prepared for it at this point. But right now we continue to wait. I look over at this line of police officers, and they are no more than 100 feet away from where I stand, and 100 feet in that direction are the protesters who are now still clearing out the street and moving off onto the side. But the thing to note at this point is that the police have not done anything yet. All they have done is assemble across the street, stare down the protesters, ask them to disperse, but there's been no tear gas, no flash bombs, no smoke bombs, nothing like that at this point. They continue to remain there. Here comes another armored vehicle coming out into the street. There's a bullhorn announcement for people to go home, and it is now beginning to leave. Maybe there's a sense of a little de-escalation from this right now. A few more people are still trying to come out into the middle of the street. Others are putting their arms around them, trying to compel them to go back onto the sidewalk and not escalate the situation. But there are an awful lot of police officers. Now, they do seem to be a little more relaxed than they were about 5 minutes ago, and you can probably see that from the pictures that you were seeing live. I'm going to take you over here a little bit, and you can begin to see what's going on in the street at this point. There are still a few people in the street, but for the most part, that street is clear, and the large group of protesters that were here have now dispersed under the orders of the police department and are now off all on the side of the street, on the sidewalks.
Matt, thank you very much.
Another armored vehicle. Scott, to your right, another armored vehicle is making its way through.
Matt, thank you very much. We're going to get back to you in a second. We want to head down to Julian Johnson, who's just a few blocks away from Matt Stesny. Earlier, saw a line of police cars going right by you, Julian. You heard as many as 9 gunshots off in the distance. Update us now since the last time we talked to you. What are you seeing? What's the scene there?
Steve, what I'm seeing right now is a large group of protesters screaming, "United we stand, divided we fall." You can see them carrying the American flag upside down. We've seen a lot of people, as Matt said, with gas masks on, with bandanas covering their faces, with surgical masks covering their faces in anticipation of tear gas. We haven't seen any tear gas yet, but everyone is prepared. And we don't know where this group is now heading, but it's heading toward at least the direction of that burned QT. We don't know if they're going to stop there or keep moving, but there's officers in that direction. There could be some sort of confrontation. We're not exactly sure. As I said before, we've heard several gunshots. Those officers rushing toward our direction after those gunshots went off. Now this large group of people moving away from where Matt was.
Julian, let's go back to Matt Stesny right now. We're going to cut you off because we're learning of more arrests. Matt?
Get out of the street because now there's more media in the street than protesters. Captain Johnson is out in the middle now once again, as I mentioned. No body armor, no helmet whatsoever. He is out directing his men and women, telling them where to go, directing the media off to the side. But certainly some arrests were made. I couldn't see how many arrests were made, but there were some arrests. Another person with a bullhorn urging people to go back. So once again, the scene has escalated again, and it is tense. And we don't know what the next move is going to be by the protesters or by the police at this point. But as that armored vehicle moved on, now we're getting the call to move back.
Move back. Media, move back.
Looks like a gentleman with a state police logo on his shirt asking people to move back. The people who are arrested have already been taken away and put in police vehicles. All right. Yeah, we're getting advised to move back and stay out of the street.
Matt, let me ask you a question as you're moving back here.
There's a lot of yelling going on, a lot of confusion in the street.
Just a few minutes ago, Matt.
People are attempting to take control of the situation.
Matt, just a few minutes ago, things seemed to be calm out there. The protesters had left the street, gone off to the side of the road. Was there one incident? Was there anything that you could see that brought the protesters back closer to the police and escalated tensions?
If you will, with the police continues.
All right, Matt Cesny, let's recap. If you're just joining us, you're watching News 4 at 10. Sharon Reed alongside Steve Savard. Once again, here we find ourselves again, live in Ferguson, already at about 9:40 p.m. As you're looking at these live images, there was a dust-up. Police moved in, made several arrests, bottles thrown, and then a quarter of a mile away, where our Julian Johnson is standing, he heard his 9 gunshots. Saw a flurry of activity. Police cars going up West Florissant towards Canfield, where the shots purportedly came from. And this scene that you're watching play out here, Matt Cesny says the tensions are high. There's an ebb and flow, Steve.
Yep.
He used the word anger. They seem to escalate when they see armored vehicles. Here we go again.
Yeah, about 10 minutes ago, it seemed like police had the situation under control. The protesters had receded. Some of them looked like they had left the area. Now, police aggressively walking down the street again and trying to clear, it looks like both even the media and protesters. But this scene seems to be changing every 5 minutes, and I think Matt's been on top of it, almost giving us a play-by-play, if you will, of what's going on. Just moments ago, before we went back to Matt, we saw an arrest, 2 police officers taking a man away. I don't know how many people have been arrested at this point, but clearly more than one. There have been several people already arrested here just in the 15 or 20 minutes that Matt says he's been reporting from that scene at West Florissant and Ferguson.
It does seem tonight there's a shorter window. Police moving in, making arrests. That includes journalists who were warned very strongly, and you saw some of that play out moments ago here live. They want journalists in a certain area, and they definitely do not want them in the street. Let's go to our Chris Stanford standing by. Chris, tell us exactly where you are and exactly what you see.
Yeah, Sharon and Steve, I just got to the intersection of Nesbitt Drive and West Florissant, which is just a little bit north of the QT. The protesters have marched north on West Florissant from where our other crews are right now, and there's an armored vehicle in the middle of the street, and you're seeing the protesters kind of gather around that armored vehicle. Some are down on their knees, others are holding their hands up in front of the police, but at this point, all the police are doing are kind of holding their line and shining their light on some of the protesters. So a fluid situation here, to say the least.
So that's Chris Stanford's vantage point. Again, live pictures at about 9:40 p.m. A large crowd, according to our Matt Cesny, started forming here. Bottles were thrown. He said police showed restraint until he heard glass bottles break. The tension's high. Anger. Police moved in quickly and seemed to make several arrests. We're working to confirm exactly how many. And then an armored vehicle came in. At the same point, a quarter of a mile away, Steve, our Julian Johnson standing by, and he heard shots fired.
There's shots fired, and then a parade of police vehicles, 8, 9, 10 of them, speeding past him down West Florissant. The scene on the right is, I believe this is Nesbitt and West Florissant, where Chris Stanford is reporting from. The scene on the left you're looking at on your screen appears to be the scene where Matt Cesny has been, where there has been some confrontation, although at this point not violent, between protesters and police officers. The police officers trying to clear the protesters out of the street. Hostilities seemed to diminish a few minutes ago, but then tensions ramped up again just a few minutes ago. Let's go back to Matt Cesny to describe what he's seeing on the scene right now. Matt?
Yeah, Steve, I am actually right behind photographer Scott Thomas. You're looking at that picture of the police officers in their helmets and shields. They're getting the call to pull back right now, so they are moving back. The police line had pushed us off the street and got us onto the sidewalk. But the police are pulling back. There's more glass being broken in the street. So far, a few people are testing this, walking out into the middle of the street, but the police now continue to move back. That's Captain Ron Johnson, right in the front of that police line. He is walking up and down that police line. He continues to, looks as if he's continuing to get advice and observations from his other officers. And he's now making the call for them to move back a little bit. To de-escalate this confrontation.
That's
with the,
Captain
yes.
Ron Johnson, who we've seen with the Missouri Highway Patrol for the better part of a week now. What about the protesters who you said, in between the anger and some of the uproar, outbursts, they seem to be an element in these protesters, seem to be policing themselves, pushing back the crowd themselves?
Yeah, that's right, Sharon. We saw a great deal of people tonight who seemed to be determined to keep this a peaceful demonstration. We saw a lot of clergy, a lot of ministers who were out here even after sundown walking among the protesters to try and keep tempers down a bit. But Johnson told us earlier he still believes this is a criminal element that's existing, that he says after sundown infiltrates into the peaceful demonstrators. And so when I'm sorry, man, we're on live right now. But he told me that by moving the people around and having them constantly move, he felt as if that could prevent some of the troublemakers from infiltrating the crowd and causing the trouble that we've seen over the last several days. It seemed to be working for a while, as I mentioned, and then just about at 9:45, that's when we noticed the large crowd in the street at this intersection, and that's when things started to deteriorate a little bit.
Matt, to give our viewers a lay of the land here, you're at West Florissant and Ferguson. This is where today police changed things up geographically a little bit. You're actually in an area that they staged specifically for the media, correct?
Right, that is right. I'm actually right in front of the looted out Ferguson market and the damaged McDonald's here at the corner of Ferguson and Florissant. The Quick Trip, which had been the focal point of a lot of the protests, is probably about a quarter mile or so to my north down the street. And then if I go to my right up the hill, I will be at the Police Command Center, which is probably another quarter mile or so away. So we're kind of right in the center of all this right now, and it certainly seemed to be the center of the demonstrating tonight, with people marching around here.
All right, Matt, we'll get back to you. We'll stay with the live pictures. Let's bring people up to date about what happened tonight and the better part of today. This is the first night without a curfew in 2 days, Steve. There is no curfew, but the National Guard now on the scene protecting the police command post, so it's a limited role for them. And of course, the independent autopsy was released today, the family autopsy, I should say. Michael Brown's family did that, and the federal autopsy was completed today. So all of this, and here we are tonight with protesters on the streets of Ferguson once again.
Chris Stanford is also very close by. He is at Nesbitt in West Florissant. Chris, what's the scene there right now?
Protesters have been backed off of the street at the request of police, who are reminding everyone to keep moving, stay off the street. You can see if we move off to just a little bit to the right, as that light is being shined on us right now, there are officers standing at the ready. Again, at this point, they have not launched anything. They're just telling people to stay off the street and keep moving. This was shortly after the protesters kind of surrounded the cops. There was a group of about maybe 100 or 150 of them at this intersection of Nesbitt and West Florissant, and right now nearly all of them are off of the street. There are a few, if we look a little bit further up south on West Florissant, there are some still standing in the streets defying some of those police orders to keep moving and stay off the streets. So we'll keep watching this, but right now police are kind of holding back and exercising a little bit of restraint.
Chris, did you have a sense tonight in covering the story and being in Ferguson and on West Florissant. Did you have a sense that hostilities may rise, that there may be trouble tonight? What was the scene most of the evening before about 9:45 when things started to heat up?
Well, I can't talk specifically to that, Steve, because most of the day we spent kind of in the surrounding areas in Dellwood talking to some of the businesses that were scared again tonight that they may be looted, some worried that they might be hit again. But there's no curfew tonight. Last night we saw a lot of those businesses, especially north of Ferguson, beyond this area where there was the curfew, where people were looting and they were breaking into stores and stealing things. So I couldn't really speak to that, Steve.
All right, Chris, you were talking to the business owners in Dellwood. They had concerns about getting looted again. The decision to bring in the National Guard has been certainly a controversial one. Some support it, others question it. Did you get a sense from the business owners in Dellwood that they like the fact the National Guard is here, because ostensibly they are supposed to be protecting the command post, which, as we saw last night, took 75 or 100 police officers off the street to protect? So theoretically, there should be more officers to patrol not only Florissant, but the surrounding areas. Did you get any thoughts from the business owners about the National Guard being here?
They thought the National Guard should have been here a few days ago, Steve, in all honesty. I actually talked to one woman at a nail salon today who said they should have been here last Sunday. Others you talk with, for example, I was downtown St. Louis today where demonstrators were arrested for protesting the National Guard being there, that Governor Nixon brought them in unnecessarily, and it was an excessive show of force. So it's a really divisive issue, and tonight on the streets, it continues.
It is a divisive issue, and as Chris Stanford said, there were protests downtown St. Louis, those who do not think the National Guard should be here, even in a limited role, Steve. But as you said, those business owners, who some of them hit twice in a matter of days, have had enough.
Look, some of those businesses operate with a very, with a very slim profit margin. We've heard from some owners that say they don't know they can stay in business if they get hit again. So there's no question, I would think all those business owners are in favor of bringing anybody in that could help keep their businesses protected. Let's go to Matt Cesny. Back to Matt Cesny, who is at Ferguson and West Florissant, where all this seemed to begin tonight shortly before 10 o'clock. Matt?
Yeah, Steve, I'm with one of the people out here who helped bring calm to the demonstration, Bishop Giovanni Johnson.
Yes.
Giovanni Johnson.
Yes, sir.
Tell me what was going on out there, and what were you telling people?
We were just telling people to obey the law of the land. If they say move on the side, let's just move on the side and have a peaceful demonstration. Today, a lot of the clergy from around the country, Church of God in Christ, Methodist, a lot of people met today, okay? And a lot of preachers came out today to keep this peaceful. And we just want people to obey the law of the land. The captain been working with us. Everybody's been working with us. As you notice, the police right back there, they're lined up. No one has to be tear gassed tonight. We just believe in God for peace, for the family. And that's what the clergy statement is today. From every denomination that's out here, we can't exclude none, to keep the peace out of the street.
Bishop Giovanni Johnson, thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. As I mentioned, there was a lot of clergy out here today, and they played a big role, apparently, in de-escalating the situation.
Including the Nation of Islam.
Including the Nation of Islam. Thank you, Bishop. And so we're at this point now where the protesters are off to the side, the police are back in the intersection, and we've kind of got a little de-escalation, a little settlement of some of the nerves and the tension that was in the air for most of the night here. Steve, Sharon?
Matt, as we want to go back to your live picture, a few minutes ago you talked about the enormous anger, and you said it seemed to escalate when demonstrators would see the armored vehicle come by. What are they saying, some of these demonstrators tonight, about the National Guard being here?
Well, Sharon, I can tell you that a lot of people have this simmering anger today about the way these protests, the way the tactics by the police have changed. They were no longer allowed to congregate and stand. The police were making them constantly move on the sidewalks. Anytime somebody tried to stop, they would hurry people along, making them move. That was tending to make some people a little bit angry, and that's probably some of the element that spilled over here tonight.
Well, Matt, I don't suppose, I would imagine if the game plan is still what we were told, it was the National Guardsmen were here to set up a perimeter around the command center, which is where you were reporting from last night. So I don't imagine you've probably seen any National Guardsmen on the street, have you?
No, I haven't seen any National Guard down here at all. They still remain up there. We haven't seen any sight of whatsoever down here in this area along West Florissant. I'm sure they remain up there, and Captain Johnson was talking about that line of marchers that were advancing on the police command center last night, and so I imagine that's a main concern as well tonight, and that's why he's keeping the National Guard up there at the command center.
All right, Matt Snesny reporting from Ferguson and Florissant. You're looking at some video of the National Guardsmen at the command center. Let's go back to Julian Johnson, who is a few blocks away from Matt Snesny. He's stationed at Canfield in West Florissant. What's the situation there?
Steve, we're in between Matt and Chris. We're at the corner of West Florissant and Canfield. And I don't know if you can hear it, but they're on the loudspeaker again telling people to get out of the street. You're going to be subject to arrest. You're unlawfully assembled. You need to keep moving. And that was the point of today. There was a new rule in place saying that you couldn't have a static protest, that you had to keep people moving, and officers hoped that would help de-escalate the situation. But tonight, that's not what we saw. I'm going to let you see exactly what we're seeing out here across the street there. There's people that are just standing at the corner of Canfield and West Florissant. It's a bit of a lull in the action here between the two opposite ends of West Florissant. Down at Ferguson, there's a little bit more action, but here is where people are seemingly coming to congregate, to stand. We are seeing some people actually going home, getting in cars and driving away, but for the most part, they're standing out here on the corner. There was a gentleman that had a loudspeaker who was actually upset at the crowd that things turned out the way that it did. He was telling people that they were selfish to think that this incident is about you. He was telling people that it was all about Mike Brown. So he was sort of scolding people that they once again tonight, got in a confrontation with police that turned things out here upside down, basically.
All right, Julian, so let's recap for people if we can. 9:40 tonight, our Matt Snesny, who is at West Florissant, Ferguson, said that the demonstrators seemed to grow in numbers, Steve. Bottles were thrown, police moved in, quickly made arrests. We're working to confirm how many, but he did say tensions were high. The anger seemed to escalate a little more when the armored vehicles came in. Julian Johnson, about a quarter of a mile away, West Florissant and Canfield, said he heard a flurry of shots fired, as many as 9, and saw police cars zooming down West Florissant and Canfield, trying to get the situation under control. They convened at the burned out Quick Trip. You mentioned the National Guard, a limited role. No, we don't see them in most of the shots where demonstrators are, but it was a controversial decision for Governor Jay Nixon. I went one-on-one with him today, and he made the point, and it seems clear, that is not what he wanted to do. He said it over and over again. He wanted people to be able to demonstrate peacefully, but felt he did need to protect that police command center. Let's stay with the live pictures and listen to what the governor said to me late this afternoon. Are you confident that you can round up that core group, those who are bent on lawlessness?
I'd prefer that they head on out. You know, that we're not trying to make this a challenge. And we certainly don't want them to impede the First Amendment rights of others.
All right, and the governor had a whole lot more to say. He understands the criticism. I'm not sure he thinks it's all warranted, but he's come under some pretty heated criticism by members of his own party, local officials, even some in law enforcement. Others support him, but he answers that as well. We'll get to that in a little bit.
Well, we were told at a 3 o'clock press briefing, which we carried from the Missouri Highway Patrol here on News 4 this afternoon, what the role of the National Guard would be. At that time, Captain Ron Johnson said tonight the mission would be to ensure the safety of citizens, visitors, and businesses in and around the Ferguson area. They would not tolerate the looting and vandalism and violence they saw last night and other nights since Michael Brown has been shot. He said the guardsmen would be fully equipped. They'd be working in conjunction with the Highway Patrol, but they were there primarily to protect the command post for the Missouri Highway Patrol. Two things here. Number one, they're not on the streets, so it's not perhaps an inflammatory situation where the protesters who may be against more police presence, more police buildup, would see them. And they're serving a function. They're allowing more officers who were charged with protecting that command post last night out on the streets to try to protect Florissant, Dellwood, surrounding areas, and also try to keep the peace. So at this point, I don't think very many people in Florissant have even seen the guardsmen at this point, and I doubt if all goes according to plan, they'll see them at all tonight.
Well, if it goes according to plan, that is the hope. But as we know, things are always fluid. At least we've seen that in the past few days as we've had extended live coverage hour after hour overnight. Matt Cesny, let's go back to your location, West Florissant and Ferguson, and tell us, is there activity there now?
Yeah, hi Sharon. We're still here, and everybody's off to the side now. West Florissant seems to be clear of any protesters and people. There's some debris in the road, but certainly not a lot. And the police remain right here at the intersection of Ferguson Avenue and West Florissant Avenue. Some of the officers actually have their helmet shields in an up position, so it doesn't appear to be as threatening as it was when we first came on the air with you. But they still remain there. They're not breaking their line. Some of them have batons, some have shields. And we certainly know what else lurks behind there, especially with the armored vehicles. But we have not seen any of the tear gas, the flash bombs, or the smoke bombs. They've shown some restraint. Captain Johnson has been out here on the street, directing the men and women here of the police department every step of the way, meeting with the protesters who were involved in that very tense confrontation. Probably well over 1,000 protesters staring down several hundred police officers here. But as we saw it on live TV, some of the peaceful demonstrators here, the clergy, for the most part, that were here, came out and began to push some of those protesters back, disperse them out onto the side of the street. There were some arrests. We couldn't count them all because the way the police moved in with the arrests, as you saw, was pretty swift. They would bring an armored vehicle in, some officers would trail behind, and they would simply fan right out into a crowd, grab anyone, I guess, who was standing in the street and arrest them. So we'll probably get some arrest numbers later on in the early morning hours. But for the most part, there were some arrests, there was some bottle throwing, but nothing, absolutely nothing like what we've seen over the last several nights down here in Ferguson.
Matt, we were told this afternoon that the police really had wanted to set up an area for the protesters to remain in. I don't know how realistic that was. I don't think any of us thought it was very realistic at the time it was released. That is that area, almost opposite you, right? At West Florissant and Ferguson.
Yeah, it's actually behind the police line, that area. Scott, if you could pan over, the area that they had the protesters in was that building behind the police line. That's a credit union. And as the protesters would march down the sidewalk, the police would let them cross the street here, and then they would go into the parking lot of that credit union. It would be there that they could stand still and not move, and then when they felt ready to walk again, they would come out of there and then start walking down the sidewalk again on West Florissant. But you're right, it seemed to work early on in the daylight hours, but then as dusk fell and night started to come, we started to see more people breaking the line, more people spilling out onto the street. And so, yeah, it seemed like, I guess the police probably thought it was a good idea at first, but for the most part, the protesters started to spill out onto the street more and more.
But still, Matt, the police are still making that announcement that if you're on West Florissant, you are subject to arrest.
Yes, and we've seen evidence of that. And the announcement is the announcement is subject to arrest or anything else, or something to that effect, which would seem to indicate that they continue to hold their tear gas canisters at bay, but will be compelled to use them as they have over the last several days.
Well, it seems to be somewhat quiet where Matt Cesny is at West Florissant and Ferguson, but where Chris Stanford is stationed near Nesbitt and West Florissant, things are becoming more active. Chris, what's the situation there right now?
For those assisting us,
Oh, it escalated there for a little bit, Steve, but the good news is that it's calmed down a little bit right now. Police out here on West Florissant encouraging people to keep moving. Clergy out here encouraging people to keep moving, saying it's a movement. Let's keep moving. They don't want to see anybody get arrested. Their voices can't be heard, the clergy are telling the crowd, if they're arrested. If you look off to my left, you can see them moving north on West Florissant. But they are moving. There's not nearly the condensed crowd that was out here just a short time ago. So they're dispersing, moving north on West Florissant Chambers. And then to give you an idea of the police presence that is encouraging them to move, take a look over to my right. Another armored vehicle has shown up. Police continue to hold their line at the ready, but at this point they're just telling people to keep moving. If they do not move, and if they're in the street, that they are subject to arrest.
your safety and the safety of others.
Chris Stanford, we continue to monitor the action here tonight. We should tell you, if you are looking for David Letterman, go to our digital channel 4.2. Sharon Reed alongside Steve Savard, News 410, extended coverage tonight, where once again we've seen periods of unrest, shots fired, Steve, bottles thrown. All of this is now the National Guard is on the scene, but in a limited role.
And with another scene like this tonight, you can understand why the decision was made tonight by the Ferguson-Florissant School District that they would put off opening day through the week, no classes tomorrow, through Friday. They've already been delayed at this point, but the first day they will go to class, they hope, is Monday. And it's interesting because Chris Negus was reporting today from the Quick Trip, about 2 miles away from the one that was burned out. They put up a chain link fence around the place to protect it. He ran into a mother with her 2 kids, had a son 9 years old, a straight-A student, lamenting the fact that he can't go to school right now. It was really a touching story and a great piece of journalism by Chris Negus. And the kicker to this is, despite everything this young man is seeing, this 9-year-old child is a straight-A student and wants to go to school, despite all the unrest, his goal in life, long-term goal, is to be a police officer. He said to serve and protect. It was really quite a story. But again, it goes back to how these protests and what's going on in Ferguson affecting so many people that don't want this in their backyard.
All of it affecting the neighborhoods, the people of Ferguson. Let's go back to Matt Cesny, where I understand, Matt, somebody else is being arrested right now.
Yeah, Sharon, it came up out of nowhere. All of a sudden, the police line broke, and they rushed right towards our corner where the media center is. A lot of officers with rifles came and looked like they arrested someone. They moved in so fast, and then the crowd just dispersed right over us. They have now retreated back. It appears they've made that arrest that they were looking to make, and now that line is retreated back towards underneath the traffic lights here at Ferguson Avenue. But I can tell you how swift and quick it was. It was an instantaneous decision on the part of the police to move in, and that crowd just like a wave came right over us as people tried to disperse.
I got to tell you, Matt,
there continue to be people with bullhorn.
We just saw somebody walk across the road with a street sign that appeared to have been pulled up, a do not enter sign. We had reports of that over the weekend. Are you seeing any destruction of property?
No, not yet. Oh, here comes the police line again. They're coming through again. Here they come. Here they come. I'm going to retreat underneath the media line. They're urging everybody to get back. Urging everyone to get back. I can't see. I see a lot of arms up. A lot of guns drawn, but they're pointed down at the ground by these police officers. But it was an effort to clear the crowd off that corner, and I have to tell you, it worked pretty good when they come rushing in with the guns like that. That corner emptied out pretty fast. I've been separated from photographer Scott Thomas, but I'm sure if you're still getting the pictures, you're seeing what's happened. He may have a better vantage point than me.
We are. He has an excellent vantage point.
But I'm on a little bit higher ground.
We are seeing the picture. Scott Thomas doing a great job to bring us on the front line of the action here. And also, Matt, you can tell the strategy is in place. As soon as the police think they have everything under control, they immediately begin to retreat. So obviously, that's part of the strategy, and they've been using that strategy for the past hour since we've been on with you.
Yeah, I think you're right, Steve. I think it is a strategy move on the part of the police department. These quick little bursts of moving in on a corner or on a sidewalk, it clears the crowd out. It tends to catch people by surprise and does make them disperse rather quickly. But I can tell you right now, as soon as they retreat, it seems like people fill right back in at this point. I don't know how much longer this will go on, but it certainly seems as if this is going to be how things play out for a little while here.
All right, Matt, and now we're going to look at Chris Stanford's vantage point, Nesbitt and West Florissant. I believe we saw that do not enter street sign that it appeared to be a demonstrator had, if not ripped it out, maybe somebody else did, was carrying it across the road back and forth. Chris, what can you tell us? All right, as we get ready for Chris, as we get ready to try to reestablish with Chris Stanford again, you said it, Steve. Police seem to have a tactic in play tonight. They get in, restore order, then retreat. Let's go to Julian Johnson. We're hearing that there's activity where you are, Julian, a quarter of a mile away, West Florissant and Canfield.
There were shots fired. Sharon, we had to take cover behind a van because I believe there were shots fired. I believe there were shots fired right at the corner where we were at West Florissant and Canfield. So we ran to take cover behind a nearby vehicle. Police at this time are making repeated requests for these people to go home and telling them that they're unlawfully assembled in the middle of the road. It seems as though they do not want to arrest anyone, but people just aren't heeding their warnings. They're still staying out here. They're even destroying some property, as you saw with that street sign, walking back and forth in front of the officers, taunting them, because they know that officers right now do not want to get aggressive, it seems. They just want people to go home. I'm hearing some people screaming. I'm not sure if that's because someone was potentially shot. But again, we were at the corner of West Florissant and Canfield. Right before you came to us, we heard shots fired, 1, 2, 3, and we ran to take cover behind a car. You see some people running, possibly in our pictures right now. But it's a very chaotic scene from where I stand. The chopper overhead has its light pointed in this area, trying to see if anyone may be injured possibly, or worse. There are people coming out with their hands up. Police right now not making any more type of announcements.
All right, Julian Johnson. So there was a flurry of activity, 9 gunshots earlier, Steve, within the past 30 minutes. Then 1, 2, 3, we heard him say moments ago, more shots fired. We're talking about 3 active scenes. This is West Florissant and Canfield. We've got Matt Cesny at West Florissant and Ferguson. And we have Chris Stanford at Nesbitt and West Florissant. And I know you made the point, National Guard protecting the police command center. That should free up more officers to try to cover some of these scenes. But they still got a lot of work to do. Their job's cut out for them tonight.
Oh, absolutely. And I would think we're going to start seeing an increased police presence in that area after Julian heard shots fired. We're having trouble hearing Julian at times because you can tell the police helicopter is right overhead. Let's go back to Julian for a description of what's going on right now.
The gunshots, we had to take cover immediately, Sharon and Steve.
All right, Julian Johnson trying to stay safe, duck down, take cover. All of this, we're watching unfold again. Steve, what is this? You lose track after a while. Is this night 10?
Well, I think I aired last night. I was saying I meant day 9. I was saying it's been 9 days since, and I was actually saying day 9. This is day 10. It's been, I guess, 9 days since the shooting of Michael Brown. If you count that Saturday, that would be day 1. Yeah, we don't know if there's end in sight. But two things here about that. Number one, as I was saying, I'm sure we're going to see increased police presence moving into the area where Julian was. And let's hope that the shots fired we're hearing, they're just for effect. People are shooting, if they are shooting, they're shooting not at anyone. They're shooting for effect. They're shooting to make noise. They're shooting to stir up something. It's not a good situation, but hopefully no one is the target of gunshots being fired. We've had 2 or 3 different reports of it where Julian is tonight.
And just so you know that tonight is a little bit different. Not only is the Missouri National Guard on the ground in Ferguson, again, limited role around that police command center, but there is also a staging area, if you will, that police set up for members of the media, want them to stay in that area, not in the street. We've seen some aggressiveness from officers, law enforcement with journalists all day, several arrested, several had confrontations, if you will. So they're doing things a little bit different tonight. We're trying to pick up on the nuances. But again, you never know what's going to happen or around what time. Again tonight, 9:40 p.m., our Matt Cesney standing by at West Florissant and Ferguson as we continue to stay with the live pictures, saw increased activity, a growing crowd, bottles thrown. Matt, tell us what you see right now and bring us up to date how we got here.
Yeah, Sharon, we're still here on the corner, as you mentioned. There are a lot of people going around with bullhorns, urging people to stay calm. There is kind of a stillness that's kind of fallen over the area right now. I think a lot of people are kind of just trying to digest what they witnessed over the last hour here and how it matched with some of the anticipation they had about how this night could have turned out. And so far, we're left with this scene of some protesters remaining on the sidewalks and this line of police in helmets and batons and shields holding their line right at the intersection of Ferguson Avenue and West Florissant. I'm hearing another plea from another gentleman in the street with a bullhorn asking people to go home. I'm working my way back over to the corner where our camera is, and we can see the police still there. As you saw within the last 10 or 15 minutes, the police will make these quick rushes and rush into the crowd or rush onto a sidewalk to make an arrest. And it moves the crowd very quickly and disperses them out. The corner I'm on right now is populated mostly with reporters and media. Most of the protesters who were here were cleared out when police moved in last time. And this corner actually is one of the designated media areas where journalists are allowed to observe what's going on. So we're in what I guess you would be considered a safe area. But more protesters remain out. There's Scott again. So, like I said, we're kind of in this period with this stillness right now. Police remaining there, protesters over here on the sidewalk, and we're kind of waiting to see how this scene plays out. Whether in fact most of the people go home or the police retreat back up to the command center up the hill on West Florissant.
Matt, let's hope it remains calm, for sure. We'll get back to you in just a moment. Sharon, you spent the afternoon, part of the afternoon, talking to Governor Nixon today. Describe his mood and how open he was to the tough questions you asked him today.
Well, I think he was candid. I certainly was in my questioning to him. We pressed him on a number of things, why the decision to bring in the National Guard, why now, but also about how this whole thing is playing out before the world's eyes, how he's viewed in the thick of it, and his leadership role. All of that I pressed him on, Steve, and here's the governor earlier this afternoon. Have you made missteps, Governor? Have you?
Well, you make decisions as you move forward. You certainly do. But we're focused on learning each day and using what we learn to help protect the safety of folks out there, protect the rights of folks out there, and get justice.
Do you have a disconnect with the people of Ferguson beyond? There are racial tensions, issues here, Governor?
People have been, throughout this entire process, people have been thanking me for being willing to step up. This was unprecedented action.